Corazon Aquino. Maria Corazon, Cory, Sumulong Cojuangco Aquino. The 25th of January 1933 to the 1st of August 2009. Was a Filipina politician who served as the 11th President of the Philippines from 1986 to 1992. She was the most prominent figure of the 1986 People Power Revolution, which ended the two-decade rule of President Ferdinand Marcos, and led to the establishment of the current democratic Fifth Philippine Republic. Corazon Aquino was married to Senator Benigno Aquino Jr., who was one of the most prominent critics of President Marcos. After the assassination of her husband on the 21st of August 1983, she emerged as leader of the opposition against the president. In late 1985, Marcos called for a snap election, and Aquino ran for president with former Senator Salvador Laurel as her running mate for vice president. After the election held on the 7th of February 1986, the Batasang Pambansa proclaimed Marcos and his running mate Arturo Tolentino as the winners, which prompted allegations of electoral fraud and Aquino's call for massive civil disobedience actions. Subsequently, the People Power Revolution, a non-violent mass demonstration movement, took place from the 22nd of February to the 25th of February. The People Power Revolution, along with defections from the armed forces of the Philippines and support from the Philippine Catholic Church, successfully ousted Marcos and secured Aquino's accession to the presidency on the 25th of February 1986. Prior to her election as president, Aquino had not held any elected office. She was the first female president of the Philippines. As president, Aquino oversaw the drafting of the 1987 Constitution, which limited the powers of the presidency and re-established the bicameral Congress, successfully removing the previous dictatorial government structure. Her economic policies focused on forging good economic standing amongst the international community, as well as disestablishing Marcos-era crony capitalist monopolies, emphasizing the free market and responsible economy. Her administration pursued peace talks to resolve the Moro conflict, and the result of these talks was creation of the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. Aquino was also criticized for the Mendiola massacre, which resulted in the shooting deaths of at least 12 peaceful protesters by Philippine state security forces. The Philippines faced various natural calamities in the latter part of Aquino's administration, such as the 1990 Luzon earthquake and Tropical Storm Thelma. Several coup attempts were made against her government. She was succeeded as president by Fidel V. Ramos and returned to civilian life. Aquino was diagnosed with colorectal cancer in 2008 and died on the 1st of August 2009. Her son Benigno Aquino III served as president of the Philippines from 2010 to 2016. After her passing, monuments were built and public landmarks were named in honor of Corazon Aquino all around the Philippines. She is continually highly regarded by her native country, where she is called the mother of democracy. Aquino was born Maria Corazon Sumulong Cojuangco on the 25th of January 1933 in Paniqui, Tarlac. Her father was Jose Cojuangco, a prominent Tarlac businessman and former congressman, and her mother was Demetria Sumulong, a pharmacist. Both of Aquino's parents were from prominent political families. Aquino's grandfather from her father's side, Melesio Cojuangco, was a member of the historic Malolos Congress, and Aquino's mother belonged to the politically influential Sumulong family of Rizal Province, which included Juan Sumulong, who ran against Commonwealth President Manuel L. Quezon in 1941. Aquino was the sixth of 8 children, 2 of whom died in infancy. Her siblings were Pedro, Josephine, Teresita, Jose Jr., and Maria Paz. Aquino spent her elementary school days at St. Scholastica's College in Manila, where she graduated at the top of her class as valedictorian. She transferred to Assumption Convent to pursue high school studies. After her family moved to the United States, she attended the Assumption-run Ravenhill Academy in Philadelphia. She then transferred to Notre Dame Convent School in New York City, where she graduated from in 1949. During her high school years in the United States, Aquino volunteered for the campaign of U.S. Republican presidential candidate Thomas Dewey against Democratic incumbent U.S. President Harry S. Truman during the 1948 United States presidential election. After graduating from high school, she pursued her college education at the College of Mount St. Vincent in New York, graduating in 1953 with a major in French and minor in mathematics. After graduating from college, she returned to the Philippines and studied law at Far Eastern University in 1953. While attending, she met Benigno Ninoy S. Aquino Jr., who was the son of the late Speaker Benigno S. Aquino Sr. and a grandson of General Servilino Aquino. She discontinued her law education and married Benigno in Our Lady of Sorrows Parish in Pasay on the 11th of October 1954. The couple raised 5 children: Maria Elena, Balzi born 1955, Aurora Corazon, Pinky born 1957, Benigno Simeon III, Noynoy 1960–2021, Victoria Eliza, Veal born 1961, and Christina Bernadette, Chris born 1971. Aquino had initially had difficulty adjusting to provincial life when she and her husband moved to Concepcion, Tarlac, in 1955. Aquino found herself bored in Concepcion and welcomed the opportunity to have dinner with her husband inside the American military facility at nearby Clark Field. Afterwards, the Aquino family moved to a bungalow in suburban Quezon City. Throughout her life, Aquino was known to be a devout Roman Catholic. Corazon Aquino was fluent in French, Japanese, Spanish, and English aside from her native Tagalog and Kapampangan. Wife of Benigno Aquino Jr. Corazon Aquino's husband Benigno Aquino Jr., a member of the Liberal Party, rose to become the youngest governor in the country in 1961, and then the youngest senator ever elected to the Senate of the Philippines in 1967. For most of her husband's political career, Aquino remained a housewife who raised their children and hosted her spouse's political allies who would visit their Quezon City home. She would decline to join her husband on stage during campaign rallies, instead preferring to be in the back of the audience and listen to him. Unbeknownst to many at the time, Corazon Aquino sold some of her prized inheritance to fund the candidacy of her husband. As Benigno Aquino Jr. emerged as a leading critic of the government of President Ferdinand Marcos, he became seen as a strong candidate for president to succeed Marcos in the 1973 elections. However, Marcos, who was barred by the 1935 Constitution to seek a third term, declared martial law on the 21st of September 1972 and later abolished the Constitution, thereby allowing him to remain in office. Benigno Aquino Jr. was among the first to be arrested at the onset of martial law, and was later sentenced to death. During her husband's incarceration, Corazon Aquino stopped going to beauty salons or buying new clothes and prohibited her children from attending parties, until a priest advised her and her children to try to live as normal lives as possible. Despite Corazon's initial opposition, Benigno Aquino Jr. decided to run in the 1978 Batasang Pambansa elections from his prison cell as party leader of the newly created Laban. Corazon Aquino campaigned on behalf of her husband and delivered a political speech for the first time in her life during this political campaign. In 1980, Benigno Aquino Jr. suffered a heart attack, and Marcos allowed Senator Aquino and his family to leave for exile in the United States upon intervention from U.S. President Jimmy Carter so that Aquino could seek medical treatment. The family settled in Boston, and Corazon Aquino would later recall the next 3 years as the happiest days of her marriage and family life. On the 21st of August 1983, Benigno Aquino Jr. ended his stay in the United States and returned without his family to the Philippines, where he was immediately assassinated on a staircase leading to the tarmac of Manila International Airport. The airport is now named Ninoy Aquino International Airport, renamed by the Congress in his honor in 1987. Corazon Aquino returned to the Philippines a few days later and led her husband's funeral procession, in which more than 2 million people participated. 1986 Presidential Campaign. Following her husband's assassination in 1983, Corazon Aquino became active in various demonstrations held against the Marcos regime. She began to assume the mantle of leadership left by her husband and became a figurehead of the anti-Marcos political opposition. On 3 November 1985, during an interview with American journalist David Brinkley on This Week with David Brinkley, Marcos suddenly announced snap elections that would be held within 3 months to dispel doubt against his regime's legitimate authority, an action that surprised the nation. The election was later scheduled to be held on 7 February 1986. A petition was organized to urge Aquino to run for president, headed by former newspaper publisher Joaquin Rox. On 1 December, the petition of 1.2 million signatures was publicly presented to Aquino in an event attended by 15,000 people, and on 3 December, Aquino officially declared her candidacy. United Opposition, UNIDO, party leader Salvador Laurel was chosen as Aquino's running mate as candidate for vice president. During the campaign, Marcos attacked Corazon Aquino on her husband's previous ties to communists, characterizing the election as a fight between democracy and communism. Aquino refuted Marcos's charge and stated that she would not appoint a single communist to her cabinet. Marcos also accused Aquino of playing political football with the United States in regards to the continued United States military presence in the Philippines at Clark Air Base and Subic Naval Base. Another point of attack for Marcos was Aquino's inexperience in public office. Marcos's campaign was characterized by sexist attacks, such as remarks by Marcos that Aquino was just a woman, and that a woman's remarks should be limited to the bedroom. The snap election was held on 7 February 1986, and was marred by massive electoral fraud, violence, intimidation, coercion, and disenfranchisement of voters. On the 11th of February, while votes were still being tabulated, former Antique governor and director of Aquino's campaign in Antique Avilio Javier was assassinated. During the tallying of votes conducted by the Commission on Elections, 30 poll computer technicians walked out to contest the alleged election rigging being done in favor of Marcos. Years later it was claimed that the walkout of computer technicians was led by Linda Kapunan, wife of Lieutenant Col Eduardo Kapunan, a leader of Reform the Armed Forces movement that plotted to attack the Malacanang Palace and kill Marcos and his family, leading to a partial re-evaluation of the walkout event. On 15 February 1986, the Batasang Pambansa, which was dominated by Marcos's ruling party and its allies, declared President Marcos as the winner of the election. However, NAMFREL's electoral count showed that Corazon Aquino had won. Aquino claimed victory according to NAMFREL's electoral count and called for a rally dubbed Tagumpay Bayan, People's Victory Rally, the following day to protest the declaration by the Batasang Pambansa. Aquino also called for boycotts against products and services from companies controlled or owned by individuals closely allied with Marcos. The rally was held at the historic Rizal Park in Luneta, Manila, and drew a pro-Aquino crowd of around 2 million people. The dubious election results drew condemnation from both domestic and foreign powers. The Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines issued a statement strongly criticizing the conduct of the election, describing the election as violent and fraudulent. The United States Senate likewise condemned the election. Aquino rejected a power-sharing agreement proposed by the American diplomat Philip Habib, who had been sent as an emissary by U.S. President Ronald Reagan to help defuse the tension. On the 22nd of February 1986, disgruntled and reformist military officers, led by Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile and General Fidel V. Ramos, surprised the nation and the international community by the announcement of their defection from the Marcos government, citing a strong belief that Aquino was the real winner in the contested presidential election. Enrile, Ramos, and the rebel soldiers then set up operations in Camp Aguinaldo, the headquarters of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and Camp Crame, the headquarters of the Philippine Constabulary, across Epifanio de los Santos Avenue. Cardinal Sin appealed to the public in a broadcast over church-run Radio Veritas, and millions of Filipinos gathered to the part of Epifanio de los Santos Avenue between the two camps to give their support and prayers to the rebels. At that time, Aquino was meditating in a Carmelite convent in Cebu. Upon learning of the defection, Aquino and Cardinal Sin appeared on Radio Veritas to rally behind Enrile and Ramos. Aquino then flew back to Manila to prepare for the takeover of the government. Aquino was sworn in as the 11th President of the Philippines on the 25th of February 1986. An hour after Aquino's inauguration, Marcos held his own inauguration ceremony at the Malacanang Palace. Later that same day, Ferdinand Marcos fled the Philippines to Hawaii. Shortly after leaving the presidency, Aquino traveled abroad, giving speeches and lectures on issues of democracy, development, human rights, and women empowerment. At the 1994 meeting of the UNESCO World Commission on Culture and Development in Manila, Aquino delivered a speech urging the unconditional release of Burmese democratic leader Aung San Suu Kyi from detention. Until her death in 2009, Aquino would continue to petition for the release of Aung San Suu Kyi. Aquino was a member of the Council of Women World Leaders, an international organization of former and current female heads of state, from the group's inception in 1996 to her death. In 1997, Aquino attended the wake and funeral of Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta, whom she met during the latter's visit in Manila in 1989. In 2005, Aquino joined the international community in mourning the death of Pope John Paul II. In 2002, Aquino became the first woman named to the Board of Governors at the Asian Institute of Management, a leading graduate business school and think tank in the Asia-Pacific region. She served on the board until 2006. On the 24th of March 2008, Aquino's family announced that the former president had been diagnosed with colorectal cancer. Upon her being earlier informed by her doctors that she had only 3 months to live, she pursued medical treatment and chemotherapy. A series of healing masses for Aquino, who was a devout Catholic, were held throughout the country for her recovery. In a public statement, during one healing mass on the 13th of May 2008, Aquino said that her blood tests indicated that she was responding well to treatment, although her hair and appetite loss were apparent. By July 2009, Aquino was reported to be suffering from loss of appetite and in very serious condition. At that time, she was confined to Makati Medical Center. It was later announced that Aquino and her family had decided to stop chemotherapy and other medical interventions for her. Aquino died in the Makati Medical Center at 3:18 a.m. on the 1st of August 2009 due to cardiorespiratory arrest at the age of 76. Thanks for watching HerStory channel. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe our channel.